You're listening to Conversations on Careers and Professional Life. I'm your host, Gregory Heller, from the MBA Career Management Office at the Foster School of Business at the University of Washington. This season, I'll be joined by co-host Jonathan Azoff, the co-founder and general partner of Snowcap, a venture capital firm investing in deep tech climate solutions in our global supply chains, for a series we're calling Conversations on Careers in Climate Tech. Welcome, Jonathan.
Thanks, Gregory. Over the course of this season, we'll talk to entrepreneurs across climate tech and sustainability about their careers and the career opportunities for job seekers looking to impact one of the greatest challenges facing humanity. We'll break each conversation into 2 episodes, the first focusing on our guest's business, how it came to be, who their customers are, and what kind of impact they hope to have.
And the second will focus on the advice our guest has for job seekers looking to make a pivot into this space. This season is made possible with funding from Snowcap. You can learn more about their fund and portfolio of investments at snocap.vc. This is a special episode of the podcast recorded in front of a live audience at the KEXP Gathering Space in Seattle Center as part of the Pacific Northwest Climate Week and the Bloomberg Green Festival. I want to extend a special thanks to Jackie Moe and Anna Maria White and KEXP for making this recording possible. If you're listening to this episode before July 13th, be sure to check out the Pacific Northwest Climate Week calendar of events on Luma, including a talk with reporter and author Akshat Rathi in conversation about his book, Climate Capitalism, with the Foster Business School's Dean, Frank Hodge, on July 13th at 6 p.m. at Town Hall, Seattle, and the Bloomberg Green Festival at Seattle Center taking place on the 10th, 11th, and 12th. Check the show notes for links. We hope you'll enjoy this conversation on careers and professional life with Lauren Selig, founder of Shake and Bake Productions, film producer, investor, entrepreneur, board member of the XPRIZE Foundation. Well, welcome to Pacific Northwest Climate Week here at the KEXP Gathering Space. My name is Gregory Heller from the Foster School of Business, and we are doing a live taping of our podcast, Conversations on Careers in Professional Life, and a special series called Conversations on Careers in Climate Tech. We are joined today by my co-host, Jonathan Azoff, and our guest, Lauren Selig. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
So I've got a couple notes on an introduction for you that I'll go through, but then I think we're going to give you an opportunity to tell us about your career path, and then we've got some questions.
I'm ready.
All right. So I mentioned that this is Pacific Northwest Climate Week, which is also overlapping with the Bloomberg Green Festival, which is happening here at Seattle Center for the rest of the week, starting tomorrow. And that is an event that's going to have a number of really interesting people speaking, as well as some films. And Lauren here has had a career in film as well. You started your career, you just clarified with us, at Variety. We'll get into that story. And then worked at DreamWorks. You've worked at Microsoft. You founded your own production company. You've produced too many films to list here. But they include Hacksaw Ridge, Lone Survivor, American Made, Rocket Man, and Everest. You've also been involved with virtual reality with Facebook 360 Studios, the VR Summit of Mount Everest, and I think perhaps most related to Pacific Northwest Climate Week, you are on the board of the XPRIZE Foundation, which is tackling some of the most pressing challenges through innovation and competition. You've been an early investor in a number of companies, including Vaxxinity, which helped bring the COVID vaccine to the public. And sort of related to my work, you finished your MBA at the Foster School's Technology Management MBA here in Seattle.
In the inaugural year.
Yeah.
It's fun.
So welcome to Conversations on Careers in Climate Tech. Your undergraduate degree was in policy and international relations. I said you have a JD and an MBA, and you're a film producer. Can you give us the tour, narrate how you got from point A to where you are now?
A very unexpected, very wobbly, non-linear way that I got there. I actually went to Georgetown to the School of Foreign Service. I thought originally that I wanted to be like Christiana Amanpour, be on the front lines, tell lots of stories, make meaningful news, and have a hook to hang my hat on there. And very quickly realized I did not want to be in the front lines. That was probably not the smartest solution. And actually ended up, a friend of mine I bumped into, and he was a great early filmmaker. And we were just joking around one day, and he said, I bet you my name ends up in Variety before yours, Variety being the publication for movies and television. And I didn't really think about it until about a year later. I was in London going to school at the London School of Economics during a year abroad, and I was walking down Water Street in Soho and walked by the offices of Variety, and I thought, I gotta go win that bet. So I literally walked in off the street, asked for a job as a writer, got a job that day, and wrote my first article about movies, about a Michael Winterbottom film, and ended up with my name in the byline. Took the article, sent it to my friend, and said I won the bet. And the prize for winning the bet was he had to get me a job in Hollywood, and he made good on his bet, and I ended up moving out to LA the following summer and working for a fabulous producer named Mark Johnson at DreamWorks, who made things like Donnie Brasco and Rain Man and Good Morning Vietnam and Breaking Bad. And that sort of launched my entry into the entertainment space.
Yeah, I want to go back to that walking in off the street and asking for a job. Do you think that there's a lesson there for folks who want to break into working in climate tech right now? The sort of moxie of just going in and asking for what they want?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think everything that you do should just be fun to begin with, and just challenge yourself. Go past what your comfort zone is. See what's possible. And you're never going to get anywhere if you don't just ask. So if you want the job, ask for it. If you want to try something new, go try to do it. But I wanted to win the bet, and I thought it'd be fun. I didn't even know what Variety was. I don't think I'd ever read a Variety article in my life, but I saw the logo. I wanted to win. I walked in, and I got lucky and got the job.
Kind of piggybacking off of that, it strikes me too that at least in the decision to go into film, you at least mentioned to me before that you found that it intersected in so many different ways, that you've connected with healthcare, you've connected with environmentalism, all through film. And in a way, like breaking into climate, at least for you, seems like it was multiple steps. So can you tell a little bit of that story, like how it kind of evolved into getting more involved with environmentalism and things like that?
I think a lot of it ended up being, extreme luck, to be honest. I mean, to give you a perfect example of it, the reason why I ended up being involved in a biotech and a vaccine company was because Peter Diamandis, who was the founder of the XPRIZE, and I'm very lucky to be on his board, called me one day in January of 2020. And I just had my third child, who was home at 2 months old, and he says, you got to send a documentary film crew to Telluride, Colorado. And I said, well, I don't do that. I mean, we don't just ship somebody off. What are you talking about? He said, there's something really meaningful happening here. I have to document it. You have to come. And I said, well, I can't. I just had a baby. I'm home, blah, blah, blah. And he said, please, you have to see what they're doing. And so I ended up seeing what they were doing and realized very quickly that what they were working on was the first antibody tests for what we now know of as COVID. And this is January, early February of 2020. And I called him the following day and I said, Peter, I don't know what this very funky couple that lived in Telluride that were working on this. I said, I don't really know what they're doing, but there's something really cool about this story. And I think we should fund it. We should fund what they're doing as a study. And so it actually ended up being myself, Peter Diamandis, Tony Robbins, of all things, and a few others that funded what became known as COVAX, that was then renamed as Vaxxinity. We took it public a couple years later. They are now successfully working on vaccines for COVID, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and cholesteremia. The most successful front runner right now is the Alzheimer's vaccine, which we are very in much later stages than we ever thought possible. And none of that would have happened had I not been asked to tell a story. And so a lot of the things that happened because of that. And to continue on in that random, non-linear journey, one of the companies that I truly believe in that could be a game changer in environmental issues is a company that we helped start called Colossal, which was also, quite frankly, in the very beginning, a joke. It was, hey, Lauren, what do you think about bringing back the woolly mammoth? And I was like, well, that just sounds like the dumbest idea ever. What are you talking about? But from a scientific perspective, if you could take a animal or a plant or something that doesn't exist anymore and bring it back in a way that you could revitalize coral, as an example, or revitalize a forest that has been decimated, that can all be done with science now. And so we bootstrapped the beginnings of a company called Colossal, and we will be birthing a woolly mammoth. I mean, that's insane when you think about it, but it's happening. And then out of that came a company that was spun off called Breaking. And Breaking, actually this is kind of a disgusting real thing, but the average human eats the equivalent of a credit card a week worth of plastic, which is awful. But what Breaking does is it breaks down plastics and water and other substances so that you don't have that happen. And that all spun out of Colossal. So these little, jigsaw puzzles are what were part of my story, at least, and hopefully part of other story that can help the environment in some ways.
So it sounds like that old adage that luck is when opportunity meets preparation, and that you, in your career, time and time again, the opportunity has met your preparation as well as your drive.
Well, I was definitely not prepared for any of these things, let me be clear. But I think it's luck meets just a curiosity of, what can we do with this? And maybe if I don't have the solution, maybe I know the right person who does, or 10 steps down the line, somebody else will have a solution for it. We might not be ready for it now, but it could be something that's possible years down the line if you just keep it in the back of your head and open up your network and your mind to making sure that it is something you want to pursue. And maybe if it's not possible for me to fix it or solve a problem or have a potential for a solution, that there is somebody out there that does. And that, I think, is one of the most amazing parts about organizations like the XPRIZE.
Can we actually, so I'd love to dig in on that a little bit. I think it is often said, so first of all, thank you for acknowledging the role of luck in so much of this. I think that level of humility is desperately needed. The idea of luck, though, is interesting to me, specifically when I think of the adage of professional athletes who are often said to make their own luck, right? They still rely on luck, but they seem to get more lucky than others, at least the best athletes. And when I think of your story, I think of a way you made your own luck. It seems like getting involved with XPRIZE was like the beginning of opening yourself up to opportunities where luck would play a greater role in your life, whether it was with the vaccines or with the woolly mammoth. In any one of those cases, there was this sort of initial point where luck started to matter. And I'm curious, can you talk a little bit more about the decision to get involved with XPRIZE, why you're still involved with them?
So I hesitated at first. Actually, I resisted at first, mostly because I probably had 3 or 4 people that said, "Oh, you should really meet this great guy named Peter Diamandis. He has the XPRIZE." And I was really busy and, quite frankly, overwhelmed with what I already had on my plate. I was a new widow. I had 2 kids who at the time were 3 and 6 when their father passed away. I was having to basically do both roles of mom and dad and working, and I didn't have time. And my friend just kept saying, "Talk to the XPRIZE, talk to Peter, it's amazing, you have to. And I just kept saying no for almost a year. And finally, he called me one more time. He said, "Peter wants to see you, have dinner with him." And I said, "I don't have time." And he said, "I'm coming to your house, and I'm watching your kids tonight, and you are going to dinner with Peter." And that's exactly what happened. And what ended up being a no very quickly became a board seat at the XPRIZE table. And from then on out, it was just, I love what they do. I love how outside the box they think. And I love that the possibility that a team in the middle of absolutely nowhere could come up with one of the greatest solutions of all time to one of the biggest problems of all time. And that's what we look for, right? Why is it that you should only be able to focus on the smartest and the best and the brightest in one university and that's the only one that can solve it? It's not. It doesn't work that way. Our impact in environment is global, and our solution should be global.
Do you think that there's a role for government to play in funding the same type of prize-based innovation that the XPRIZE funds?
I mean, the answer is definitely yes. In fact, we're working right now with the UAE government on a very large scale, $200 million prize for desalinization in the UAE. We're working with a group called Hevolution, which is a longevity prize that we have to reverse aging. That's about a $150 million prize that we have outstanding, and governments are getting involved, and they continue to get involved because not only are there going to be companies spinning out of these solutions that we didn't expect possible, that are monetizable as well, but it's up to the private sector and the public sector to work together on a lot of these initiatives to make things possible.
One question I have, it's the second half of the first question, which is why stay involved? Like, what is keeping you at XPRIZE and keeping you helping shape that vision and shape the outcomes of the organization?
I don't think I can say no to helping something that could be game-changing and globally scaled, right? It might be a prize for reversing aging. It might be a prize for carbon initiatives, which we have with Elon right now, which is a $100 million prize for carbon initiatives. It might be a coral restoration prize. I have to be involved. For me, it's compelling, both from the story side, but also from the I want to leave the next generation better. And if I step away from that, I feel like I'm doing a disservice to what is possible. I'm sure there are plenty of people that could do better at what we do at the XPRIZE board than my seat at the table, and I would happily give up my seat for that person. But right now, I'll do whatever I can in order to help them out as best I can. And that network there is really vast and meaningful, and I love the people. It's all about working with people that you really like. And that is across the board in every industry. It's the people that's the tie-off point between everything, right? How do you pick a company that you really like? It's much less to me about what do the numbers look like, and it's who are you working with, and are you really going to get your hands dirty with that person? Because oftentimes things get really sticky and really difficult, and when they do, you want to make sure that the people who are having a seat at the table are the people you want to be with. It's your family, it's your enemy at times, but you want to make sure you get out of there alive together.
Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I heard you in another interview talk about the importance of picking projects that really inspire you and that you love, and working with people that you really enjoy working with.
So a strange story on that one, and how like maybe the first movie that I ever got involved in as an example of that was a friend of mine invited me to Cannes, and I wasn't working in the movie business. I was doing something totally different, and I was, again, a luck story. I get to Cannes, lose my luggage, don't have any clothing to go to this event that night, and basically my sweat. So I'm like, now I've missed this big fun event I was going there for. And so I instead went to a dinner with a bunch of random people who I'd never met. And I'm seated across the table from this one guy who keeps pitching me the story. And I said, listen, I don't fund movies. I don't do that. I'm not in that business anymore. And he then tells me the story again and again and again. I'm like, wait a minute, I know that story. That's about Marcus Luttrell. I love his story. It's really meaningful. Tell me more. And by the time I stood up from that dinner, I was like, I have to be involved in Lone Survivor. I don't care what it takes. And it was luck of me being at the table and realizing it was an important story that needed to be told that got me interested in being part of that. But it was a people thing. I liked Marcus's story. I like what that means to be part of a story like that. I liked the person who was telling me that story that wanted me involved, and I loved the experience of putting something out there that people can talk about that gives meaningful change. If you can do that about the environment, great. If you can do that about mental health, great. If you can do that about, whatever it is that's your topic that's meaningful, it starts with people first.
So many of your movies, or most of your movies, are not documentary, but they're based on true stories. Yeah. How do you think about telling a story in the dramatized way versus telling it in a documentary way?
So we did a little bit of both with Everest, as an example. We made the movie Everest, the Jake Gyllenhaal action movie, super fun, but we also did the first walk up Mount Everest using VR. And it was a perfect example how you can take a super fun, fast-paced story that you'd see on a big screen, and then you can also turn it into an educational format. So that was a very different way of looking at it. I believe that both of them have meaningful roles and have different formats and different topics of conversation around them, but equally as powerful.
Can I jump in? So something that stood out to me in your response there is and I've heard you say this to me before, so I'll just make it more explicit. I think there is a motivating aspect in film specifically. It's why I got interested in film myself in the New York Climate Film Festival. And you've had a storied history of being involved in indie film, and I think there is something there. And I'm noticing it now as I notice more and more young people choose to leave traditional careers and move into climate work. And that is that, I mean, some of this is conjecture, but I like to think that science is becoming sexy again, that getting involved in environmentalism is, you know, I grew up watching like Bill Nye and Steve Irwin, and like I remember thinking like, man, these guys are so cool, and Star Trek and all this stuff. But I'm curious, when you think of the role of film, do you see it as similarly motivating in that way, as it's getting people to pay attention again?
I mean, the classic movies that I love so much about this. Think about Weird Science, right? Revenge of the Nerds. Like, those were great movies, right? Those were like rah-rah cheering, you know, vote for the underdog kind of movies. And they were science. It was cool to be a nerd. It should be cool to do that. And I mean, look across the street. We've got the Climate Pledge Arena right here. You go in there and you play the greatest sports ever in an arena like that. It's meaningful. Why would we not be able to take the technology that we have, the science that we have, and turn it into things that are cool? It shouldn't be cool versus not cool, or science versus science is not the cool topic. I love the fact that my kids love the science element and love the space element and love the medicine element. I love that. I think that should be the cool factor. It can't just be, you know, movies and music.
Yeah, I'm going to give a shout out to Mark Rober, because I have a 10-year-old boy, and Mark Rober is like his superhero. You know, we're always watching that. We've got the kit coming to the house. We're building the stuff, and I think it's doing a lot to spread this love of science and STEM and STEAM in schools and in the youth today.
Yeah, I think it's very important. I wish there were more classes and opportunities for kids at a very young age to learn the things that I think are going to be meaningful and compelling and necessary later on in life, right? We have water issues right now. We have issues with power. We have issues in, you know, COVID and other kinds of possible pandemics out there. These are massive global scale issues that we are dealing with on a day-to-day basis, that if we can think of them as cool things to find solutions for, you'd have more people excited about doing that. Now, we've often talked about how do you have a younger initiative for the XPRIZE, where forget about having adults solve these problems. Let's let the kids who have much more flexible plastic brains go figure it out instead. And that's what we're working on, right? Because it might be your 10-year-old that might come up with the better solution than I might.
Can you share more about, I'm personally interested in that, can you share more about like how, if you are a parent of young kids, how you might get involved in a process like that or a program like that?
Yeah, I mean, so we have some programs going through schools right now, actually, with the XPRIZE, and a couple of years ago we started a little piloty program that happened at our Visioneer Summit, which is something we do every year, where we come up with the next prizes for the following year, and the kids of the people that went to that summit all participated in their own mini kids XPRIZE. It was very cool to see what some of these kids came up with. It was great and challenging for them. And I think that should be something that's put through school systems in a unique way. No different than like Code.org did coding across the United States for coding for kids.
I want to go back to the virtual reality in 360. I remember the first time I put on a Google Cardboard with my phone in it and stood atop the Empire State Building, you know, with the New York Times VR, and how transporting that experience was. And, you know, that was almost, I feel like 7-8 years ago, probably. The technology has come so far. We've got spatial computing now with things like the Apple Vision Pro. Do you think that there is an opportunity today to use these new technologies to transport decision makers, politicians, to the places that are impacted by climate change, to a glacier that's been sort of reconstructed digitally from 60 years ago to now standing, you know, in a rocky field and the glacier's 100 yards away, or to the floods that covered, you know, 2/3 of Pakistan, to have that visceral experience so they understand what's at stake when they are making policy decisions?
I think that the lack of awareness is one of the bigger problems, and sometimes the way to make people more aware is to tell a story in a different way. No different than Inconvenient Truth could tell a story that people might not have seen otherwise. You know, you use the example of the cardboard thing that you used as your first VR experience. My very first one was I put on a VR, almost like a helmet, and I think it was probably 2002, and I was a molecule going through a water turbine. And depending on how you change the turbine, it changed the initiative, the water inertia of how it would go through and the efficiency of a dam. So on a science level, right, if I can use VR to show how something could be more efficient, that's amazing because it could change an entire power grid if you're doing it that way. Or if I can do a march up Everest and show that this year it was this much snowfall and 10 years later it's nothing. Or coral and what that does. Or teach history in a way. I mean, we did this with the Martin Luther King and the March on Washington. We did a full VR experience of the March on Washington. Most of us were not alive for that, and so why not be able to recreate history in that way to teach things differently? And I think there's plenty of really unique both VR and non-VR pieces of content that can do that effectively. And I think it's very helpful to have that for governments to understand what's happening on this planet in a way. I think it's also helpful for solutions to problems that exist, like people that have a amputated arm and they feel pain where the arm is gone. You can use VR to recreate what it feels like to have an arm, and they find the pain goes away. I mean, that's a really interesting concept, right? To use it for a solution like that, to use it for mental health and to use it for PTSD and to use it for calming techniques and to use it for training. All of those things are important initiatives where technology meets a solution halfway, and it's our job to get people to the other side of that.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the sort of VR to convince politicians. I've been thinking about this problem a lot too, like how do you raise awareness? And I do keep coming back to film as the broad medium. But now that I think about it, there's maybe a larger question there, which is policy in general. Like your world has intersected business, you've intersected film, media, law, even at the beginning of your career. But policy, how has policy come into your life? And in particular, have you seen it intersect any of the work you've done with environmentalism or climate?
The answer is yes, and in a weird way. And I think I told you this story the other day, but I like this story because it gives an example of how what I thought I was talking about turned into something totally different. But I was invited to speak at the World Government Summit, and last year when I spoke, I was on a panel, and the panel was very specifically about gaming and AI and the cross-section between government and AI and entertainment. Very odd topic, but we were up on stage and speaking, and afterwards this very lovely gentleman approached me and he started asking questions about, well, if you do this in AI, how is this going to affect our energy grid? And we were in Dubai at the time, and we had a good half an hour conversation about it, and then at the end of the conversation, he said, I'd really love to follow up with you. Here's my business card. And he was the head of energy for the entire country, right? He was thinking, what happens if this becomes so, advanced and extreme, and all these games that people playing and VR that people are consuming so much energy out there on our grid. Now what happens to the energy grid consumption in our country, and what do we do, right? I wasn't expecting that to be where we were going to go with the conversation, but it was where we ended up. And now because of that, we have a whole other slew of initiatives that would have never been approached prior to that.
It's all connected, basically. Yeah.
I've got a question going back to your work in film, and I heard you say something like you created 35 films in 5 years. Early in your career, and that seems just like an unbelievable number. But I wonder if your experience doing that influences the way you think about investments and think about the XPRIZE and think about venture in terms of like getting enough deal flow, I guess would be the technical term, in because you want to give a number of different ideas a shot at winning?
So, again, this goes back to the people part of it, right? And I truly believe that like the people are the ones that are going to light the way to the next cool idea. So I have a hard time saying no when someone says, you got to see this, you got to look at that, you got to read this. So that's my biggest problem for sure. I'm learning the art of the no, and I'm not very good at it. But sometimes because you're following down that path, you end up in a really cool situation of looking at technologies you'd never see otherwise. A great environmental example of this recently was a friend of mine said, you've got to come to Malibu and see this really interesting technology. Sign this NDA, come on out. And I'll tell you the pieces that I can tell you, but I went out and I saw the demo of a home that looks like an Aman resort that is a completely untethered home from anything. It doesn't require to be tapped into the sewer, doesn't require to be tapped into any power grid. It lives completely off-grid. It is above the ground, so it doesn't touch anything underneath it. So it's on pylons that do not disturb the earth underneath. The average person emits 1 cup of ash from the toilet a year using this system. I mean, it's brilliant, right? Why would we not want to have that as our housing? But it didn't exist yet until now. Now that's possible. And because we're using different technologies to create a new housing environment, and because I listened to a friend of mine who was half a world away telling me, go and check this out, I would never have found it otherwise. And that has then turned into probably multiple businesses that'll come off of that. One cool place that I went to go visit on a super hot afternoon in Malibu when I was, literally that morning in the emergency room because I had cut my finger, and I'm like, I still gotta go see this house. So I brought my kid and off we went, and that was great. Turned out super.
I think one thing that I keep on hearing from you is this real openness, this curiosity. You even mentioned curiosity as opposed to preparation, to follow your nose, sort of, the things that seem interesting. Do you have thoughts on whether that is a cultivated skill, or is it an instinct? Is there a way that people can listen to their own intuition, trust their intuition enough to listen to it?
Let me break it down really simple.
Yeah.
I am far from having perfect intuition. I have had just as many mistakes as I have had successes. I can tell you a lot about all the mistakes that I've made. But I like to keep those in the past and focus on the ones that worked out. I've gone down incredibly bad rabbit holes on some deals in some industries and some things where I just thought, this is amazing and this is compelling and this is undeniable. And usually where I mess up is where I don't have the proper instinct on the person. Where I'm like, this is an amazing, leader or something, and I'm wrong about the person. It might not have been wrong about the technology, but I wasn't right about the person leading it.
I love that. As my career has progressed, I've learned that so much about what we think of as objective truths actually come down to the people, the progenitors of those truths. And I love that insight. That this is why we go to business school, right? It's not to diminish business school, but it is to meet people, to have a network, and to trust that network to help you in your career. So I totally buy that. I think that's a really great insight. Maybe just stick on that topic for a little. Just
by the way, I think that's why it's fantastic that this Bloomberg event is happening this week, right? Think about how many touch points you're going to have in that room of people that you might not meet otherwise.
Yeah.
So to have an awareness and to start paying attention to who's around you, why are they there? What do they need? What do they want? What can we do together to make things better, to add value to each other's ideas? I mean, that's the whole purpose of having events like this.
Yeah. So in that spirit of divulging your experience and sharing your experience, a lot of people who are listening to this are going to want to take shortcuts. They're going to want to learn from your experience. And if we agree that people are a major aspect in accelerating your career, especially if you want to move towards climate. You've probably learned some things about how to judge character, how to judge decisions, admittedly by your own accord, maybe not perfect hit rate on that, but what can you tell us about how to make better decisions as it pertains to people in your career?
I would say follow what you love first. I mean, you really only live once. You got to just love what you do and follow the people that will help you get there, and then pay it forward to others. So whether that means contributing your time to helping other people create their own, goal setting or achieve something, I think it's really important to be able to do that. A random example for me was, I'm probably not a great teacher, but I was asked to teach a film course. I taught a film course at USC, and one of the kids in class, I could just tell he was a superstar. And he was so passionate about what he wanted to tell, and he asked my help in making a movie, and we made a movie, and he sold it, and he did really well with it. But that's an opportunity for me. That's a gift to me, not a gift to him. And so if there's just sort of one or two people a week that you can kind of help guide along the way, I believe it kind of pays it forward to you. So that would be my, little trick of the trade, and sort of listen to the shifts and the changes of what happened in your life. Like, why is it that happened? At the time, I think everything that I'd been upset about and I thought didn't go my way actually ended up being the best thing ever. But you just didn't see it in that moment in time.
You can't know it in the moment. You know it in hindsight.
Yeah. No, you can stomp your feet and get pissed off and swear all you want, throw a big tantrum and throw all the toys out of the crib. But you can look back on it later and go, oh, wow, I'm so happy that happened. That was great. I got lucky.
I want to revisit something that you just said. The student asked you for help making this movie, and you felt like helping him was a gift to you. The opportunity that you had to help bring that story into the world was rewarding and felt like a gift.
For sure.
And I think this is something that people really don't understand enough, that asking for help is an opportunity to make the person you're asking feel good, right? It's not always putting someone else out. It is actually giving them an opportunity to help you that is a gift.
I think one of the problems that people have is that they don't ask for help because they're ashamed to ask for help. It is a gift to be asked to help someone. It really is. And I think if we think about it in that way, it could shift a lot of mindset about a lot of different issues. And so, a friend of mine called me up the other day, a very, very successful person who has hit a really bad bump in life with a health issue, and asked for what he thought was a huge favor. And the first thing I said was, I'm so grateful that you asked me. Thank you for calling me. And when someone hears that, it's like, there's this huge amount of relief that comes over them when they go, I don't feel like I've caused a burden to somebody else. And I think it's really important to do that to people as a human. I think it helps so much about what we could be doing differently and better as people.
I love it. I honestly think even though this is more about the psychology and the wisdom of professional life, I also think that this is so relevant right now in the field of climate, because there's so many people who are on the precipice, and I can't say exactly what's holding them back. In some cases it's life, like they got to pay rent and they don't know how to make the transition, but in other cases it's seeing something that maybe they didn't see before. And so I think accepting the role of people in your life and accepting that could be your path, just put your trust in people, is beautiful.
And I think on a grand scale too, is to put yourself in somebody else's shoes or something else's shoes is a really important, idea. I say thing because I'm thinking of a perfect example of where things could go wrong environmentally, right? So, and my husband had worked on a project where they were trying to get rid of malaria. And from my understanding, as he told the story, malaria can be disseminated by mosquitoes, but only one gender of mosquito, and that gender has a different wing beat. So they were trying to basically get rid of the mosquito that had that wing beat, but not the other mosquito. but they didn't think it through, right? If you now have one gender of mosquito only, that mosquito is pretty pissed off. It's probably going to get bigger, angrier, and bite you more. So it's like if you don't think it all the way through and you don't get on the other side of the thing, like what is it? If you do X, it causes Y, but take that all the way out there. Take that idea all the way out and think about environmentally when you're doing something, is it really going to be helpful or hurtful by doing that? And then how do you find a balance between one and the other?
Yeah, it's systems thinking.
Yeah, systems thinking, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good way of putting it.
We're coming into the home stretch of our conversation, and I want to know if there is specific advice that you have to young people. Let's say folks who are graduating college. I work with students who are in their MBA, so they're maybe a couple years out of college. But people who are coming right out of school now, they're facing, they went to school during the pandemic. They're facing maybe an uncertain climate future, an uncertain economy, an uncertain political future. From your experience, is there anything that you would advise people who are who have just graduated out into this world to think about as they, think about their career and what they're going to do next?
Number one, find mentors that can help you, that really care about you. Number two, I'd put pick your top 5 places that you want to work, or top 5 people that you've learned from, or top 5 books that you've read, and reach out to all of those people or places and just start asking questions, start making your networks early and often. And as a good example of that, there's an organization called Curious Cardinals, which my kids love, that helps match up their passion with someone who's already been down that road. So if you're interested in fabric making, it'll match you with like an incredible fabric designer. If you're interested in some sort of programming, it'll match you with someone who's many years, usually older than you, and already had an extraordinary career in that. And I love that sort of mentorship piece of it. So be a mentor and be a mentee. That's the word.
And it's a form of asking for help to engage
it's the same
in that
thing.
program.
And then just keep engaging. Just keep keep threading the needle. It's a woven experience that you're having in life.
I have a question in the same vein for young people who are just entering the workforce. Should someone choose to enter into the fields of climate tech, environmentalism, they're also learning a new language. And it strikes me that you might also have a perspective on how to communicate, given that you communicate through film and you're trying to incentivize people to maybe make change or to pay attention. So how would you instruct young people to think about communicating about climate or environmentalism to a broad audience or to older audiences that may not be in their demographic, that may be intrinsically motivated to care anyway?
Well, I think the climate industry as a whole is one of the most exciting and dynamic ones that exists out there today, and certainly one that's undeniable. But if you are not directly in the industry of climate initiatives, everything you do is already part of a climate initiative in some way. You might not be working directly for a climate initiative company, but probably where you're working or the company that you're starting is going to have a touch point in there somewhere. And so pay attention to that, sort of honor that as you're working in whatever space that you're in, and make it exciting for other people to be excited about climate initiatives, because if we don't solve some of those problems, probably many of those problems we've all caused or our generations past have caused, it is a cataclysmic thing that is only going to get worse. So it's our obligation to try to reverse as much as we possibly can, whether you go down a pathway of being directly involved in the climate initiative or not.
Sort of the idea that every job is a climate job. In the same way that, I feel like a decade ago we started to say every company is a tech company, even if they're not a tech company. Now every company is a climate company because every company has a greenhouse gas footprint. Every company can make a decision to shift which side of the balance sheet they're adding to or taking away from in terms of climate change. Yeah. Do you think that there's a role that, as an investor, that you have, not just in investing in companies that are, let's say, explicitly working to solve challenging problems, but is there a bigger role that investors have in asking these questions when they decide where to put their money?
Depends on what the goal is of what they want to do with their money. So that's up to them as an investor for sure.
This is not investment advice.
This is not investment advice for sure. But for me, it's kind of like saving money. I make sure that a very large percentage of what I do is focused in that space. And I'm always paying attention to the companies that I'm investing in. Sometimes there's always an angle that is environmentally focused. Whether it's not the main drive of it, there's a piece of it that's there. So whether it's a consumer-based product and they're using certain materials that I think are better for the environment or not, or whether it's a movie that maybe you're going to be shooting in a place that's more environmentally friendly or not, or maybe it's a company that's making a video game, but maybe the video game is focused on certain things that actually will help the environment. All important touch points in what we're working on. And sometimes it's initiatives where you're working on a biotech company, but pandemics cause huge problems environmentally oftentimes. And how is it that we can find a pandemic before it starts? You're doing a biotech company, but by doing that company, you might be able to target something before it's an outbreak. And that's an outbreak, whether it has to do with fish and wildlife or with humans.
Yeah, once again, it's all connected, and you can go upstream, downstream. Yeah.
Is there anything you're working on right now that's really exciting that you want to share? That you can share?
Well, let me think about it. Well, the answer is always we're definitely working on a lot of cool different things for sure. I would say right now the one that I love the most, well, not the most because I can't pick my favorite babies. We're doing a lot in sports initiatives, not focused on environment stuff as much, but there are environmental aspects of it. I had a delightfully fun day at the AI Institute at MIT and seeing some of the technologies that are coming out of there. I think that the AI space and matching that with the environment together is fascinating, very compelling and undeniable for me at least. So I'm excited about that. I'm working a lot in the Middle East right now where they're thinking really big in terms of what they're doing on environmental scales and globally. In ways that I haven't seen in other parts of the world, which I think is very, very cool. And there's a lot of really interesting energy companies that are coming out of that, which I think are quite exciting.
Energy companies in the Middle East specifically?
No. Worldwide. Energy companies worldwide. And some of them here, right here in our backyard.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, do you have any final questions, Jonathan?
I think I'm good. I learned a lot myself, mostly about psychology, but as it pertains to career, I think I resonate a lot with what you shared, Lauren, and I appreciate you sharing that wisdom with all of us.
Thank you for inviting me, including me to have this conversation with both of you, and I hope everybody has a great green week.
Yes. Thank you so much for having this conversation on careers in climate tech.
Awesome. Have a good week, everybody.
I really wanted to turn this episode around quickly during the Bloomberg Green Festival, so I'll share just a few things that stood out for me from our conversation with Lauren. First, paying attention to your intuition about the people you choose to work with is so important to both happiness at work and success of the endeavor. I've had this experience in my career firsthand. People make all the difference. Second, ask for help. You're doing people a favor when you ask them for help because it gives them an opportunity to do something that will make them feel good. This is backed up by the research of Wayne Baker in his book, All You Have to Do Is Ask, and Adam Grant in Give and Take. I also loved what Lauren said about finding mentors, and this relates directly to asking for help as well. And last, which is also related, go for it. If you see something you want to do, a company you want to work for, a person you want to meet, you need to go for it. You miss all the pitches you don't swing at. Again, I want to thank Jackie Moe, Anna Maria White, KEXP, and Brandon Fitzsimmons for sound engineering and venue support. Learn more about Lauren's company, Shake and Bake Productions, at shakeandbakeproductions.com. Thank you for listening to Conversations on Careers and Professional Life. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider sharing it with a friend or classmate. Help others find the show by leaving a rating or review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. Conversations on Careers and Professional Life is produced by me, Gregory Heller, with support from the Foster School of Business Office of MBA Career Management. Learn more about the show, find show notes, and past episodes, and get in touch with me at conversationsoncareers.com. This episode was made possible in part with funding from Snowcap, a venture capital firm investing in early-stage platforms that directly and indirectly solve the climate crisis. Learn more at snowcap.vc. That's SNOCAP.vc.